Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. I think genetics is a large part of morality, but even if it's only 50%, the other 50% is due to nurture, and so it's still the case that by the time the person is 8 to 15 years old, his entire morality has been shaped. His genes are, determined at birth, at conception, and his, nurture is probably entirely determined by the time he's 8 to 15 years old. His entire morality that he's going to get from his parents, them teaching him morality, has already been shaped as well. Most of the character he'll ever have has been formed already due to his parents' good or bad parenting by that age. So either a person has moral or amoral genes, and that cannot be changed. And then by the time the person is, let's say, 16 years old, all he's going to learn about morality has already been learned because of his parents' teaching. So people don't typically morally improve, or at least they don't improve much after maybe the age of 15 or so. But maybe a guy is highly aggressive and assholishness and stuff when he's younger, right? In his teens or 20s, and then when he gets older, maybe late 20s, mid 30s, whatever, he's mellowed out somewhat, right? So then people see him and his different demeanor, his mellower attitude, and they think that he has improved. They think he has become a better person, but this is not necessarily true at all. Just because an aggressive, assholish guy becomes more mellow doesn't mean he has become more honest, doesn't mean he has become more compassionate, doesn't mean that he has become less selfish, doesn't mean that he has become more generous, etc. All it means is that his energy has declined, his testosterone has declined somewhat, his health has declined a little bit, his libido has declined a little bit, and he's gotten a little savvier, right? It doesn't mean he's become a better person, a morally superior person to how he used to be. It might mean that he has discovered that being an asshole and acting as if his actions don't have consequences is not to his advantage, and so he's gotten less vicious and less aggressive out of mere self-interest. This is not the same thing as having become a more compassionate person or an otherwise better person. It just means that he's more clever about how he acts in terms of making people like him so that he can get his way, so that he can make more money, get more sex, get in less fights with guys and less arguments at his job, etc. If you get to know such a guy, he may seem greatly improved compared to his younger self. If you knew him when he's younger and then you meet him again when he's older, 10, 20 years older, you may think that he's become a much better person, but only when you get to know him deeper will you realize that he's actually the same person that he was before. He still has the same bad character he had when he was 17 or 18 or whatever, or 20, And maybe you'll need to be friends with him a few years before you'll discover this, or maybe you'll need to date him if you're a girl and you dated him when you were younger, when you're like 17 or 16, and then you date him again when he's like 28 or 32, and then you think he's way better and he's much more marriage material or whatever. But really, after you date him for a few years or a while, maybe 6 months or whatever, or a year, then you eventually realize, oh, he's just more clever now. You're gonna realize that, oh, he's not actually any better. When the shit hits the fan, when it comes down to the wire, only when things get bad will he be forced to show you his real character. And then you see that his actual true character is still just as bad as it ever was. Only then, in the hard times, will his callousness, his selfishness rear its ugly head, his other bad qualities rear their ugly head, and then you'll realize that he's not actually made any moral improvements of himself at all. Now, sometimes guys will become more virtuous as they get older. They realize that non-virtue is bad and virtue is good, or they become religious and that opens their heart and makes them wiser as well, or they discover their heart when they have a child and that makes them develop compassion or, whatever. Sometimes guys do become more virtuous as they get older due to experience. Sometimes guys become more virtuous as they get older, but often guys don't become more virtuous. They just seem to become better people. Or if they improve, they've not improved nearly as much as they seem to have improved, right? Increased mellowness in a bad guy does not mean that he has become a better person. And the same thing applies to XXers. XXers often seem to become more kind, more patient, more wise, more loving, etc. as they get older, but often it's just a case of the woman becoming more savvy, more clever, more deceitful, and realizing that you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, or however that saying goes. And so she pretends to be more virtuous, so that she can get her way more often. But that's a far cry from being a genuinely good person who is kind and patient out of the goodness of their heart. So bad XXers are just like bad men in this way. They seem to become better people as they get older, but they're actually really just becoming more deceitful and hence actually more evil. But XXers are inherently amoral, and I think XXers are far less likely to become truly morally better than men are, right? Like XXers are much less likely to truly morally improve over time than men are. A lot of times men don't improve, or they don't improve as much as they seem to have, but, a fair amount of the time men do improve, even if only a little. But women seem to improve often a lot more than men seem to improve, but women are often not improving in the slightest. They're just becoming more savvy, and this is important to understand, I think. Men may improve just a little bit, but XXers usually don't improve at all. Not unless they start dating a very moral guy who's a very good influence on her, and she moves to a very virtuous city or country and therefore has lots more virtuous people around her compared to the unvirtuous people that she had around her when she was younger. Unless XXers are influenced by a more virtuous society or by hardships, or by a virtuous man like a boyfriend or husband who was not in her life earlier when she was less virtuous, XXers are not going to make moral improvement and are not going to make, and any improvements that they seem to make will actually just be deceitful and will be signs of her becoming less virtuous, that is, less honest. But men can morally improve without having to get a virtuous wife or live in a virtuous society. Although I think these kind of men perhaps need at least a little bit of an influence from virtuous people before they are able to make moral improvements. But basically, I think XXers don't morally improve on their own, but men do morally improve on their own. At least in some cases, at least a little bit. So even in this respect, men are more admirable people than XXers are. The measure of a man is not how laid back or moral he is. The measure of an XXer is not how sweet she is. The measure of a person is the same as it always has been and always will be. That is how honest, kind, generous, restrained, peaceful, faithful, content, calm, and unattached a person is, and other virtues as well. A person's morals are what make them a good or bad person, not their outward qualities that may masquerade as virtue, but are not virtue itself. The true value of a person is seen in the hard times, and that's when it becomes truly important to be a genuinely virtuous person. And people who seem to be good because of having gotten more savvy or more mellow, these people crack under the pressure under the hard times. Because at heart, they're still as selfish and callous as they were before. So when the hard times hit, these formerly bad and now seemingly good people are seen to be unreliable, are seen to be not the good person that you thought he or she was. The time when you most need people to be reliable and good is the very time that seemingly good, but actually still bad people will not be reliable, will not be good. Hard times is when you most need people to be good, and that is the very time when bad people will not be good. They won't maintain that facade of virtue through the pressure of the hardship. Do you want a spouse who is faithful most of the time, but when temptation comes along, they crack under the pressure and cheat on you? Do you want a spouse or a friend who doesn't defend you when everyone is slandering you unjustly? Right? Like they don't slander you most of the time, but then they don't defend you when, other people are slandering you, when you've been, someone made up a story about you that everybody believes that's really, slanderous. Do you want a friend or a spouse who throws you under the bus in order to not be associated with you because of your bad reputation, which is based on a false rumor? See what I mean? You want people to be there for you when the times are hard. Those are the only kind of people with any real value. This is true even when it comes to business, such as if you have a very smart employee, but that employee is a backstabber. Such a smart but backstabbing employee is worthless. Such an employee might become a corporate spy and sell information about your business to other businesses that you compete against. So even in business, morality is super important, and intelligence is not something that makes up for, character. Right? Just like, ability to be agreeable or fun is does not make up for character in a friendship. Just like, beauty and riches don't make up for fidelity in a romantic relationship. Lack of character, lack of morality is always a problem. Not just in the personal realm, but in other realms as well, such as in the corporate world. That is one's career. Morality, character are important to love, to friendship, to business, and to everything else. What's important if you're an alcoholic is that you be able to resist the temptation to go back to drinking when you feel the strong temptation to drink again. What is important in a marriage is that you be able to resist the temptation to cheat even when you're strongly tempted to cheat. There's this really attractive, charming person who you get along with great, who you just started getting chatted up by. This person's chatting you up and they're really attractive and you just got in a fight with your husband or whatever. The important thing is that she had the strength to resist that temptation to cheat. That's what's important. What is important in a friendship is that you're able to be restrained in your words and be loyal, even when your friend is making it very hard for you to be restrained in your words toward him, as well as loyal to him. Such as when situations are making it that way, maybe not your friend, But, like when he's being unjustly slandered by others and it's making you look bad to stick up for your friend and defend him to other people's faces, the important thing is that you are willing to defend him when he needs defending, instead of just being a fair weather friend who sticks around when things are easy and is not anywhere to be seen when times are tough. Loyalty is what is important. Guys who have merely mellowed but have not improved morally are not loyal friends, are not faithful to their girlfriend or wife, are not loyal in the business world, etc. Women who are merely sweet and have not morally improved are not faithful or not loyal when talking about their friends to other people, etc. Women who have become sweet and guys who have become mellow may be easier to be around day to day, but when things get hard, they show their true colors. The bad guy who is mellowed and seems to be a better person has a bad attitude when things get hard. He might say, like, fine, well then I'll just go and bang some other chick. Or he does so without telling his wife. Or he gets in a bad fight with her and then goes out and picks up a chick and bangs her just because he got in a bad fight with his wife. You see what I mean? Like, when things get hard, these people may be fun day to day, but when things get hard, when they get in a bad argument or something, then yeah, they might go out and cheat or something, right? So how worthwhile is a person like that? I mean, they're not worthwhile at all. They're not worth wasting your time with. They show their true colors, and then they're seen to be bad people, because of either their amoral genes or their upbringing, which lacked sufficient moral instruction, or moral instruction which lacked vigor, or which lacked punishments to back up that instruction. Or the guy tells his girlfriend where he gets in a bad fight with her, you think you matter, bitch? You don't matter. All that matters is money. And a sweet but immoral woman's immorality is seen when she divorce rapes her man and shows him no mercy. Then you see the lack of humanity, the lack of compassion, the extreme efforts that she goes to in order to not only wring every possible penny out of him, but also to keep him from his kids as much as possible. Not because he's a bad father, but because she wants to torture him by keeping his kids from him. You see, and let me also point out the selection bias here. The bad women are the ones who tend to get divorced. And the bad women in a divorce are going to divorce rape their man. But whereas a good woman, if she has a good man, they're not going to get divorced. So you don't ever really, well, not ever, but you rarely see what a good woman would act like in a divorce, about how she would not go out of her way to divorce rape the man and keep the kids from him. You never see that because the good women don't end up getting divorced, typically. I mean, it does happen, but not anywhere near as often. You see, so there's a selection bias here that makes women look terrible because only the worst women are getting divorced, and they are the ones, causing the divorce, and they're the ones, divorce raping the man because they're bad women. You see? The value of a human being is in their morality. A moral person is valuable, and an immoral person is not valuable because no matter how smart and charming he is, no matter how much he contributes to the technological development of mankind, if he is being unfaithful to his wife or girlfriend, if he's being an asshole, if he's being dishonest, if he's being a sexual degenerate, if he's being a thief, etc., he is wreaking far more havoc than the good that he's doing for the world. It is easy to destroy and hard to build. And so with, 1/10 or even 1/1000th of the amount of effort that they're making to do good in the world, they can undo all the good that they do. You could be putting, a ton of effort into making the world a better place, but it really only takes a little bit of effort to totally undermine that and cause just as much destruction in the world. Right? Like you can be putting a ton of effort into the world to try to, code freedom into being, something that still exists online. But if you're still being promiscuous, or you're, cheating on your wife, or you're fucking your kids' lives up in some other way, you could be causing just as much destruction as the good that you're doing for the world. You see what I mean? So it's really, really easy to wreak havoc on the world, and it's very, very hard to improve the world. So this needs to be understood, because it's super important to, in order to make the world a better place, you have to get rid of your faults. You have to not steal, not be dishonest, not cheat, etc., etc. Then when you're not destroying, then you can make the world a better place with effort. But if you're putting a ton of effort into making the world a better place, but you have these bad qualities, and you're wreaking havoc on the world with even just a little bit of bad qualities, like a little bit of infidelity, then you're making as much havoc and pain in the world as you are making the world a better place, if not a lot more pain in the world than the amount of good that you're doing. So it's really important to avoid evil as a prerequisite to doing a lot of good, to doing any good at all, right? Or else the evil that you do will totally undermine the good that you do. You can put a lot of effort into doing good and put only a little effort into doing evil, and yet you can completely undo all the good that you do, even though you're putting 10 or 1,000 times as much effort into doing good as you're putting into doing evil. This is the law of entropy. You can create massive destruction with very little effort, Whereas to really do good and make the world a better place takes a lot of effort. Effort which is easily undone by being unvirtuous. Like imagine if you're a guy who likes to go around and sleep with virgins. I mean, you could destroy the souls of dozens, if not hundreds, of women. Like, and then those women all are unable to pair bond their husbands, their future husbands, and then they end up divorce raping those husbands, and then hundreds of kids' lives are ruined by those divorces. And not to mention the guy and the woman's lives are ruined. Just by going around sleeping with non-virgins, you could ruin huge numbers of lives, just astronomical numbers of lives. Hundreds of lives could be ruined by you just going around and sleeping with a few dozen or a few scores of women who are virgins. I mean, it's so easy to destroy, and it's so hard to build and improve things. This is why it's so important to create your own no-go zone, because you should not let the destructiveness of promiscuous people, the thievery of the government, and other negative things affect you. The thieving of thieves, the sexual degeneracy of sexual degenerates, like the viciousness of people who aren't restrained in their words, who are assholes, like all that negativity and way more, that you can't let that into your commune, or else even just a little bit of it will totally undo all the good of your commune or your no-go zone, will totally ruin it and make it non-cohesive. You have to have your community be cohesive, and the only way to have that is to keep all the bad people out. If you let the negative things affect you, then it will undo all the good that you and your group try to do. But if you separate from thieves like government and bad women and bad men, both of whom are also thieves, both in a literal and a sexual sense, and if you separate from sexually predatory people like promiscuous men and promiscuous women, and if you separate from other bad people who are bad in other ways, then you will be able to make progress as a community, as a no-go zone. But if you do not separate from these people, then they will undo all the good that you try to do, and they will do so very easily. Imagine trying to have a commune that raises virgin women to lose their virginity to their husband so that you can have a community full of happy, lasting marriages, a community with almost no divorce in it and therefore almost no divorce rape in it. Imagine if you're allowed just one very charming, very good-looking, very financially successful, very healthy, very intelligent, very promiscuous guy. Imagine if you allow one guy like that in, one promiscuous guy who's good-looking and very intelligent and very financially successful. If you let just one promiscuous guy like that remain in your commune, imagine if you did that. He could go around and seduce every young woman in the commune and take the virginity of every young girl and ruin all those girls for future guys so that they're worthless as wife material, thus ruining all those fathers' entire life, those girls as fathers' ruining those fathers' entire lifelong emotional and financial investment in those daughters, and also ruining the ability of the commune to sustain itself by, marrying off the sons in the commune to the daughters of other men to the daughters in the commune. Because then there's no more virgin women to marry. So who are the sons of the commune going to marry then? If all the virgin daughters have been ruined by this one promiscuous, charming, good-looking, successful guy going around and sleeping with all the virgins and ruining them all. Right? Like, who are then all the sons going to marry? You see how easy it is to destroy and how hard it is to build and why you have to keep out every single bad person, The daughters raised in the commune would all be ruined by that one promiscuous guy, and so all the daughters being ruined would mean that then either the guys of the commune would still marry those women and have worse marriages because of her not having lost her virginity to her husband, and those marriages being worse would fuck up their kids because of the parents fighting more, thus fucking up the entire next generation of the commune, or those young guys in the commune would have to find wives in the outside world. And then even if they find a virgin wife in the outside world, that virgin wife is still going to be strongly influenced by feminism, and is thus not great wife material in that way. And so just by allowing one promiscuous guy to live in the commune, you could allow the entire commune to be destroyed. Such a guy can destroy the entire commune's ability to function and prosper and be cohesive and be happy. This is absolutely possible, Such a person can destroy the commune's ability to create a pocket of stability outside, separate from the outside world. Right? That's the whole point, that the commune be better than the outside world, that it be separate and that it be virtuous and cohesive and prosperous and all the rest of it, and traditionalist and have lasting marriages and all that. But if you let even one promiscuous guy into the commune, he could destroy the entire commune. You must keep destructive people out of your commune because just one bad person, one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. It is far easier to destroy than to create, and this means a community that wants to separate and be far more virtuous and far more happy and far more prosperous than the rest of the country cannot succeed unless it is absolutely ruthless about keeping out people who are unvirtuous. Bad people must be kept out no matter what the cost, and people who are born in the commune, who are either bad seeds with the genes of amorality or who become bad, Both these kinds of people need to be kicked out of the community. It's the only way a community like that can be better than the society around it. And the whole point is to make the commune more prosperous, more peaceful, more virtuous, more happy, more closely knit. If you can't do that, being unwilling or unable to keep bad people out of the commune, then there's no point in doing the commune thing in the first place. For a no-go zone or a commune to work, it absolutely must have a high moral standard that it ruthlessly and strictly enforces, kicking out anyone who doesn't meet that standard. Or the commune could have a severe punishment if someone breaks a big rule but wants to be forgiven and wants to not make that mistake again. Like if a guy has premarital sex with a girl, then instead of kicking him out of the commune, you could offer to give him a public whipping so that his back is covered with scars for the rest of his life. And he gets his public punishment, it's really, really painful, then, he's not going to want to do it again, right? And then if he never does it again, then you can let him stay in the community. But if he does it a second time, then you kick him out of the community. Give him a cruel public whipping, and then he won't do it again. And if he does do it again, then kick him out after his second offense. This is how you have to run a commune. If you don't run a commune strictly like this, it's not going to work at all, and then you'll be stuck in the outside world, and then you'll just descend into hell with everybody else. The whole point of commune is not just to do eugenic breeding and prevent the misandric laws from being enforced. It's also to survive when the crash comes. So you have to understand this. This has been Redshift. I hope someone got something out of this piece.